Well, here I am again at the bottom of Scarborough Beck. I'm supposed to be meeting my two avatars who have been helping me to present this video series. God knows where they've got to. This is the second time in 24 hours they've gone missing. I had arranged to meet them last night at 7:30. Anyway, can't wait any longer, so you'll just have to put up with me. I started this series on the history of Scalby Mills way back in 2022. It's January 2024 now, and I am just about ready to finish this bit, part 2. Yep, it's taken a long time to get to this point. Very frustrating at times because there just wasn't hardly any information available. And often the information I did find was full of errors and had to be corrected. This mill behind me is a perfect example. Plenty of drawings and paintings, yet very little in the way of actual facts that can be proved. The area around me has been named after that building, and also the other 3 mills that were further up the beck, hence Scalby Mills. Out of the 4 mills, this one was probably the first to be built, and I also believe it was the first to cease trading as a corn mill.
Where are we?
We are at the old Scorby mill. Come on, we have to meet Steve.
Are you sure we are not lost?
No, we are not lost. Now please, will you stop complaining?
We know that corn mills were a vital part to any community, and there are a few bits of data that show corn mills were operating along this river course as far back as the 1600s. Even further back in the Bronze Age, there appeared to have been people living around these parts. Just over there, a large find of Bronze Age tools and weapons were found, as shown here on this map. That is quite amazing to know that people were working and living in this area all those years ago. I doubt they would have had a corn mill though. However, we are just concentrating on the last 200 years. There are a number of drawings and paintings that were created between 1830 and 1900, and none of them have proved to me just exactly how this mill operated. I have found only a very tiny clue to how this mill might have been set up. A small reference here on the OS map of 1852. A little bit of text that says sluice.
Before we go any further, we will take a look at the 1771 map. Here we see that the land is owned by Dean and Chapter. This is land that belongs to the church, and as far as we know it is administered from Beverley. The tithes are rents collected from the farmers and are paid to Throxenby and Newby. This little area is also owned by the church but is run by John White. He is the person working the mill in 1771. We do not know how long the mill has been there, although it is also probably mid-1600s.
I also have a book called Scarborough's Flora and Fauna. It was written by Genevieve Lord MBE and published by Scarborough Council. Now, armed with all this information, I can now try and unravel the history. The image from this book is probably late 1800s or very early 1900s, but what interests me was this text. It is the only bit of positive information that I have come across that mentions this building as a working corn mill. It states that the mill was burnt out in 1821 and a tea room with strawberry gardens built on the site. All those drawings and paintings depict the mill as a going concern during the 1800s. So there is a problem. What exactly did these artists draw and how accurate are their creations? Now, from my research I know of 2 important dates, 1821 and 1857. 1821 is the date that the mill caught fire. 1857 is the date of a great flood.
A freak storm hit Scarborough, and the rainfall that came with it wreaked havoc around the town.
This is a little sequence of artists, 8 of them, who all did a lot of work around Yorkshire. Each one of them at some time in their lives have created a drawing or painting of the mill. So Peter D. Wint, he was born in 1784 and died in 1849. He was 55 years old when he drew this in 1839. When the mill burnt down, he would have been 37 years old. He was not alive at the time of the Great Flood. Peter may well have seen the mill when it was fully working, so his drawing is the best example that we have of how it might have looked. This one is Henry Barlow Carter, born in 1804 and died in 1868. Henry was 17 years old when the mill caught fire. He would have been 53 years old at the time of the Great Flood. I doubt he would have seen the mill as it was before the fire. Robert Clarkson, born in 1853, that is 32 years after the mill had stopped trading, so he would not have physically seen what the old mill looked like. And when the Great Flood happened, he would have been 4 years old. His work will have been created late 1800s or early 1900s. Walter Lindsley Megan. He was born in 1859 and died in 1944. Walter also would not have seen what the old mill looked like. He was born 38 years after the fire and 2 years after the flood. Now we have 4 more artists who all created their work in the very late Victorian or early Edwardian eras. E.W. Hasselhurst, 1866 to 1949. Ernest Uden, 1879 to 1940. A chap called Duncan, around about 1890, and J. Cool, 1900s. Looking at all the credits at the back of the book, and all the very well informed people who contributed to the book, I think we can be pretty sure that the information is accurate. So that means that this building stopped being a water-powered corn mill just over 200 years ago. We now know for a fact that the mill closed down in 1821. Well, it has been a puzzle trying to work out just how this mill operated, and even after months of research I am still not 100% certain I have proved just how they took water from the beck. The other 3 mills had some traces of where the old mill races were, physical remains and bits of information on the OS map of 1852. As already mentioned, the only bit of info on any map regarding this mill is this bit of text marking an old sluice gate, which is shown to be further up the beck. There is nothing else on any of the maps that show where a mill race or pond would have been, and there are no positive signs or remains anywhere along the beck that indicate the course of a mill race. So therefore, I have to try and figure it out from those drawings and paintings that were created by those 8 artists, plus some of my own logic. So my starting point is the fire of 1821 and D. Wint's drawing. My brother Colin found this in the British Library, and it had a date of 1839. It is a very good early example of what I've just said about images not revealing the true story. We can see a water wheel and a dam, and we can say, that's how it worked, it's so obvious. So this is how it looked and how it worked. Simples. Well, no, I'm not convinced because a lot of things just don't make sense. Let's explore this drawing in a bit more detail. You can see the water wheel, a tail race and the beck. Note there are no signs of any mill race, although to be fair it could be behind the hill in this area and out of sight of the artist. We see a water wheel on the beck. The beck is higher than the sea level, so maybe a dam of some sort. The actual bottom of the beck is here, same as it is today. We can use that as a reference point. For reference, I will call this point point A, the benchmark. But first, a little bit of info about the artist. Peter D. Wint was born in 1784 and died in 1849. He was 65 years old when he died. He specialised in landscapes, and it is generally accepted that his work is a good representation of the scenes that he drew. Peter would have been 55 when he drew this, that is 18 years after the mill had ceased to be a watermill. It is possible he stayed here while working on his drawing. We know it had been 18 years since any equipment was in place to turn corn into flour, so he will have had to rely on what he could see and what people around him may have told him what used to be here. Or he may have called to see the mill in his younger days and drew this from memory. In 1821 he would have been 37 years old. Whatever the actual date was, one thing we can say is that he was very much alive when this mill was in operation. The reason I am pointing these facts out is that there are some parts of his drawing that don't really make sense, and I am sure there's been some artistic license used to make the image look a bit more interesting. Also, I don't think this drawing is as good as the 40 or so other drawings and paintings he has done over the years of other country scenes. I am no art expert, but even I can see that this drawing has a few faults.
That is not fair, sir. I am a very good artist. Very much better than young Carter.
We have the water wheel, tail race, some sort of dam, and hills, very big hills. We see that there is some sort of dam higher than the water wheel. In one way that makes sense because you need the water level to be higher than the bottom of the water wheel, otherwise the wheel will not turn. The water is shown to be returning to the beck at the bottom of the wheel. This is the tail race. The drawing does not show any mill race or if the wheel is undershot, middle shot or overshot. It looks to me to be an undershot system. This is the least effective of the three systems. Studying the drawing, it would be fair to say that what you see would work. We have to assume that the mill race is somehow channeled behind here to get the water to the wheel. So far so good perhaps. But what about these hills? There is no way that those hills belong in this image. Even 50,000 years ago there were never hills of that size in this location. Then we have the proportions of the building. Out of all the available images of the mill, I have yet to see one that matches this one. This looks very narrow and out of proportion with the rest of the building. Was this building ever that thin? Today that section is about 5.5 metres wide. Even allowing for perspective views, it is clear that he has drawn this part of the building to look very narrow. It is possible though that this entire section was pulled down and rebuilt, making it wider. Seems a bit unlikely to be honest. Or perhaps he did a quick sketch, took it away and worked on it in his studio. That could explain why it is a bit odd. Maybe he forgot what the hills actually looked like. We have the water wheel. We know that in 1821 the building caught fire and very little of the timber work was left. So if this was drawn 18 years after the fire, we are either looking at the original water wheel, assuming that it managed to escape the fire, or a replacement wheel which would have been fitted for show rather than a working piece of equipment. By the way, notice that he has also sneaked in what looks like a heron. Not all that unusual because I have often seen a heron or two just over there on the rocks getting their breakfast. And now we look at the dam. You can see that the beck is much higher in this area compared to here, which is the riverbed where it meets the shoreline. The river base is pretty much in the same place today as it was 200 years ago. So we can use the riverbed as a guide, a constant to compare measurements. That's our benchmark. If we believe this drawing is accurate, then that pile of rocks will have been placed there to create a barrier to raise the water level. We need a minimum of 6 feet head of water to provide enough power to turn an undershot water wheel. That is 6 foot above the bottom of the wheel. Now you can see that the bottom of the wheel is also about 6 feet above the river level. So from point A we would need a dam that is 10 to 12 feet high to create a head of water about 6 feet above the bottom of the wheel. Okay, let's work that out a little bit better. Today we have this concrete wall that holds up the road behind it. Each one of those concrete blocks measures approximately 12 inches high. 1 foot in old money or 300 millimeters in today's metric system. Using those figures we now have a very good concrete ruler. From the riverbed to the top of the retaining wall, the height is around 14 feet high. We can now superimpose DeWint's drawing onto a recent image. This is what we get. Bear in mind that this is only an approximation. Even so, it is clear the dam is almost level in height to where the bridge stands today, anywhere between 10 and 14 feet. Is that really possible? This is the height of a dam at 6 feet, and 8 feet and 10 feet. We would require a dam at this point to be 10 feet above the benchmark to be able to make that water wheel turn. That would create this huge lake behind it. The span across the beck from the seawall to the cliff face is about 55 feet. It would probably take up all this area, so I doubt very much that any dam was built at this point. DeWint has drawn the sides of the beck to be much closer together. Is this accurate? I don't think it is. I reckon that the dam is much further upstream and he's drawn it like this for effect rather than accuracy. Now this bit of software can tell us the height above sea level of any landmark. For example, Castle Hill is 261 feet above sea level, Oliver's Mount 496 feet, and the top of the open air theatre is 98 feet above sea level. This is an overhead view of the beck today. Now let's add some data. At this point, our benchmark, we are 17 feet above sea level. At point B we are 33 feet above sea level, and at point C we are 44 feet above sea level. I've already said that we need a minimum head of water of 6 feet to provide an undershot wheel. So point B is 16 feet higher than our benchmark at point A. The bottom of the wheel using DeWint's drawing is around 6 feet above our benchmark. Therefore we have a fall-over gradient from point B to the underside of the water wheel of 10 feet, more than enough to power a wheel. A much smaller dam at or near point B will give us enough head of water to power the wheel. A small dam would create a decent sized mill pond behind it. This works as a storage area, keeping a supply of water on hand to power the water wheel when required. There will be a sluice gate next to the dam that allows water to be run off down the mill race towards the water wheel. It might have run along here. It is interesting to note that the old sluice is marked here. It is roughly between points B and C. So my guess is that this is where the water was actually taken off from the beck and not as shown in DeWint's drawing. I think he has brought the dam forward into his drawing, more artistic license. From where he was stood he would not have been able to see the real dam as it would be too far upstream. But it looks more impressive to have it like he has. Another very important point to take into account is the sea cut that was created in 1805. Before 1805 the beck drained water from around Cloughton, Newby and Scorby. A good water flow in winter, but very poor in summer. The sea cut was created near Hackness to act as flood prevention for East and West Ayton. All the extra stormwater was now being sent down the beck, increasing the flow and often making the stream into a very fast flowing river. Here we can see that effect in these bits of video I took this year. It's 11th of May 2020, the beck is very calm and slow moving, not a lot of rain about. And then 12th of June 2020, a period of heavy rain and the beck is transformed into a fast flowing river. So try and imagine a dam of earth 10 feet high at the end of the beck and thousands of gallons of water rushing down towards the sea. That dam will be breached time and time again. We often get shingle washed up, creating little islands that cause the beck to snake its way past the shingle and forming a new route to the sea. This happens a lot, the water always finds a way past. In 2023 I saw something that I had never seen before with the beck. Now 7 AM 7th of July 2023, we had some high tides that week and as you can see the shingle has been piled up creating a dam. I have never seen this happen before. The shingle completely closed off the mouth of the beck. The contrast between the sea and the beck was pretty amazing. You can see how the beck is very calm and flat. Even though there was this natural dam, water was still seeping away to the sea. And then a bit of rain and the shingle is soon washed away. Now as mentioned in part 1 of this series, a huge storm in 1857 washed away bridges and buildings. This mill lost part of this area, it collapsed and was washed into the sea. So any dam that may have been here would not have stood a chance. So I do not think that there ever was a dam at this location, and I believe the obvious place for it would be back somewhere between point B and C. Most of the paintings and drawings show a tail race at the bottom of the wheel. This one, which we think is 1840, shows the wheel with a wooden chute to the top of the wheel. This is what you would expect if the wheel was an overshot system. For this to work, water has to be carried in a mill race or some sort of pipe or trench that is level or higher than that chute. Bearing in mind what I just explained about dams, I don't believe that this image is accurate and the artist has painted that chute for effect. Same with this one by Carter. I'm right at the top of the beck behind the Scarborough Mills Inn on the west side. Now just behind me down there is the Scarborough Mills. As we move along, you've got the beck. It's running quite fast today. Now all those drawings, data, sketches that I've done are very good, but you need to get some sort of perspective from this angle as well. And the reason I'm saying that is that I still have not yet been able to figure out where this mill race was. You know, I mean, logic tells you that the dam was probably there, where that bit of red bag or paper, whatever it is. Still going to be quite high though, isn't it? So let's move along. We're quite high up here. As we keep coming along, you can see there's clearly no evidence of any old mill race. We'll get back there, we've got a few bits of fast flowing water. I mean, I think that a dam would have been somewhere down there or around here. Probably about there. Now of course, what you've got to imagine, if there's a dam here, that water level will be higher. Well, even I can see from where I am now, you're going to be coming up quite a bit. You probably have water up to about there. It should be enough to power the water wheel. Anyway, so a mill race would have had to go along here, probably where those trees are, and disappear from the back of there. This of course is for the undershot system that I was telling you about. You couldn't possibly do an overshot because you'd have to be way up here, and that is an enormous dam, probably at least 20 foot if not more. Well, I can't see any remains of a mill race, but like I've been saying all along, the big floods over the years, especially the one in 1857, could have washed that lot away. Plus of course it could have all been overgrown. But I think where that little island is, that looks more like promising. Anyway, we'll go down to the bottom and have a look. Just come from up there, it's quite a way up. I'm going to spin the camera round a bit. To get your bearings, this is where I am looking down from the drone footage. Now, I've already said that there's a fall from about here all the way back to our point here, which is way back there, and further back around the corner is the mill. So there's a good 20 odd feet, even including 6 foot for the mill wheel itself. Now if you look closely where we are here, and again the drone footage from above shows you the location, so this is where I'm standing. So that bit's quite raised, so there could well have been a dam just there. If there was, that would be quite useful, because behind there we'd have a bit of a fall, which they could have constructed a mill race to take us down to the mill wheel. Now I'm 6 foot tall, so it should give you some idea just how high that bank is there. I'll just walk over and we'll have a look. So I'm quite a way up where I'm stood now. The bottom of the river, I would say, is probably 8 to 10 feet below me. I'm not sure how I'm going to get around the corner, but we'll have a go. I've got my wellies on. It's very boggy and lots of little landslips all over down here. Got to be careful. Right, I've made my way down to this last corner, and now of course we've got a problem, because there's no way I can get around there. Well, in summertime in August you can walk down there quite easy. As you can see, there's quite a lot of water coming down. Again, it begs the question, was the dam here? We've got two good solid rock sides, and again, you know, 200 years ago we don't know what was there exactly, but we could maybe assume that that there was part of the dam. I mean, any sort of mill race would have had to sort of somehow snake its way past that anyway to get round, so God knows how they did that. A bit of plastic or whatever it is, just like a tin. So I'm going to have to go back up to the top, go over the bridge and try and get some from the other side, because there's no way I'm going to get around there today. Big lumpy tree there that's been washed down in one of the storms. I mean, couldn't you imagine what this was like about 1857 when that massive storm occurred? 15 feet higher than what it is now, the beck just used to come flying over here. It's a lot of water. Right, so I'm back on the bridge and I've just come from over there, look, right in the corner down there. As you can see, not much chance of me getting past there at this time of year. Now, if Peter de Wint's drawing is accurate, then well, we could maybe well have a dam on there. It doesn't have to be that high. You could maybe get away with 6 foot past there. If we just stop the camera and I'll draw it in. Now we'll move along a little bit. There's all this stonework down here and path, but I think that's all been done in the 50s for people to get round, for the anglers and people to explore, or perhaps stop a bit of erosion. I don't think that was there in Peter de Wint's time. Now what you can see here quite clearly, we're trying to find evidence of where a mill race might have been. So if we just move around a little bit, we now come to the mill. Again, stop the camera there. This is where the mill wheel would have been. So from that point there, you've got to have somehow a getting water back to a dam, even if the dam was there. Now all that lot there is all solid rock. Well, I was going to go over there and do some filming, but as you can see, it's high tide in about 40 minutes, and it's a bit too almost impossible to get down there. There's some quite big waves coming in. Like this one, I'm going to have to move. Mind me bloody camera, that was a big one. So yeah, I think though I've got enough information now. I'm going to have to bring this particular part 2 to a close. I hope you've enjoyed watching the video, and look out for part 3. As far as the mill race goes and how it operated, you're going to have to draw your own conclusions. I've shown you what I think it is, but unfortunately I've not been able to prove anything. Now I'm going to have to at least get my boots clean anyway. It was a bit muddy on that hill. Whoa! I think it's time for me to go now. Thanks for watching.
"'Twas the leap of the torrent, and dark was its gleam, as it rushed in its power down the bed of the stream. And mid foam and mid uproar, 'twas fearful in might, where the fall of its waters in grandeur was bright. 'Twas swollen by the rains, and it hurried along, where the force of the current was dizzy and strong. And the deep mountain channel was rugged and rude, and broke by the fragments of rock that lay strewed, where the eddies were swift in their rapid array. There, the wheel of the mill had forgotten to play, and it silently gazed where, onwards in pride, the billows in fury tumultuously vied, like the dance of the savage, with war whoops as wild, swelled the din of the waves, round fisher beguiled. And he turned all aghast and hied thence to bank, whence he purposed to cross, ere in terror he shrank. 'Twas in vain he essayed, where the whirlpools withstood every effort he made in the furious flood. Driven back by the spray and the high beating surf, he relinquished his rod on the soft yielding turf, while the stream murmured on through the deep mountain dell, as some fierce water demon had muttered his spell, till it found the vast tide of ocean shore. Then the voice of the torrent grew mute in its roar,